This is not my group, but I figured it qualified anyway. On the Paizo forums, there's an unofficial obituaries thread for each of Paizo's adventure paths. Pre-written campaigns that take a character from level 1 up to 14 to 20, depending on the campaign. One GM posted their campaign's deaths and listed 23 deaths in total. But wait, there's more. They qualified with this gem. Note, these are only permanent deaths and don't include the times when player characters were brought back to life through Breath of Life, raised dead, etc. So the actual count was way higher. But wait, there's even more. They also reminisced about it thusly. I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours of my life running Rise of the Rune Lord, and now I look back on it with bittersweet fondness. Houston, we have a problem. I recently thought about this horror story while watching the new Conjuring film, because honestly, this event still haunts me to this day, and it's about time this story gets told. There are no important characters here except for that guy and unsuspecting victim, as that guy's brand of screwery was just that powerful. I will call that guy Tarantino for reasons which will become clear. The regular story stuff applies. I was looking for a game. A buddy of mine tells me that he is starting a homebrew campaign with a couple of other folks, and they're playing at his place. This was a while back, and the concept of Session 0 wasn't as well known, so everyone handled sending their characters to the DM by email, just based off of his description of the setting. While the setting itself was standard, we were blind meeting each other's characters, on top of me meeting the members of their group for the first time. Unsuspecting victim pulled up to the place around the same time as me, so I met her outside briefly before the DM lets us in. Immediately, a sweaty miasma hits in the face, and to Tarantino's negligible credit, it wasn't all his fault. My buddy apparently didn't know how to class up the place for guests, so everything was a frankly stereotypical bachelor pad mess. I am a gamer and been in sweaty gamer dens before, so I was fine. Unsuspecting victim didn't seem to bat an eye either. She was immediately made uncomfortable by that guy, on the other hand. When she entered the room, he sprung to his feet and bounded across the room towards her, taking his hat off like he had choreographed the motion watching Jack Skellington's movements. He had serious, "I'm going to kiss your hand" vibes, which unsuspecting victim avoided by giving everyone tiny anime bows in greeting. This, in retrospect, may have been what sealed the malevolent being's interest in her. To briefly describe our characters here, unsuspecting victim is what you would categorize as your average nerd girl. We were all early 20s at this point in various states of career and university study, and she wore her interests. Her bag was covered in buttons of anime characters, alt-rock bands, etc. Her clothes were, to my limited knowledge, not particularly stylish, but by no means frumpy. All in all, she seemed pretty comfortable in her own skin, and Tarantino probably wasn't the only player at the table who wanted to date her. Anyway, Tarantino was tall and as thin as the aforementioned Pumpkin King. Talking to him at the table and in downtime before and after games, we eventually learned that he considered himself quite athletic because of his height. I don't remember, but he was well over 6 foot, which also comes into play later. He claims that if he really wanted to, he could have played any sport in high school, but he always preferred to be a lone wolf instead of a team player. He didn't wear a fedora, but a black beanie, even though it was the middle of summer. He smelled. Probably because of the black beanie upon his greasy hair. He was kitted out in Hot Topic stuff and old graphic tees mostly, but his most defining quality had to be his disgusting toenails. Oh god, is this why the post is NSFW? Okay, how to describe Tarantino's toenails? Like his beanie, he was always wearing the same putrid leather flip-flops, so his hairy toes were always on display. They were long and clearly had been trimmed into yellowish-green rectangles with sharp, pointy edges but flat on the front. The only hint that this was clearly a choice, not just unfortunate grisly circumstances, these toenails hung over his flip-flops, and because of his height, no matter where he sat, he seemed to stretch them out so that they always seemed a little too nearby. I don't remember anything about the actual game, but the first session was immediately weird as someone got up from a seat next to unsuspecting victim and Tarantino jumped at his chance to sit next to her, ignoring the other player's protest when he came back. The DM asked him why he moved. His excuse was, "Unsuspecting victim clearly loves anime, so I have to be close to probe her for opinions." I remember for the rest of the first session and each subsequent session after that, we played 3 or 4 before the incident, Tarantino only focused on unsuspecting victim. I can't even say his attachment was strictly in-game, since the game was secondary for him from the very beginning. He always had some anime meme he wanted to pull up and show her on his phone, or an anecdote about whatever anime he was currently watching, which was obviously so relatable in this exact moment. Literally, the only part of the game I remember is him being sure to tell everyone, especially unsuspecting victim, that his character looked like Afro Samurai, with particular emphasis on the fact that he was wearing traditional Japanese sandals. Now, if you hadn't noticed by now, Tarantino had a weird thing for feet. I honestly don't know how deep that rabbit hole went, but from piecing it together from the next 2 incidents, it is deep enough to cause eldritch madness upon sight. Last chance to look away. The first incident that really tipped me off to his foot fetish was actually a game that unsuspecting victim had to miss. He sat there bored on his phone the whole time, only occasionally showing memes to the DM, who looked increasingly more and more annoyed as the night wore on. After that game, when we were sitting around doing the thing without Tarantino, the DM brought up that he wasn't actually being shown memes, but anime porn. He said that the pictures were of girls tied up in the same position, which later I confirmed with him was facing away from the camera with their feet closest to the foreground. Jesus. This video. You guys better like this video. Oh my god, I am reading some real shit shows today. Now today, I am mature enough to say that I don't kink shame. Your thing is your thing, but back then, I definitely became more morbidly curious about his predilections and his own personal grooming. I have no idea how that sort of thing would come up naturally in conversation, so I settled for being a little more observant of the types of things he was showing to unsuspecting victim. I didn't have any time to snoop further though, since the next game session, the DM revealed when everyone arrived that we would be playing at a new table he'd bought on Craigslist. I should mention that before then, we had been playing around in various seats in his living room and on his couch, as he and his roommates were also typical in dragging their feet to furnish the house. The new table was laughably huge for the space, and it was clear that he had seen it and decided that he wanted to hear some dice clatter on it long before any other consideration. Unsuspecting victim put her bag down and went to the car or something, and it seemed like Tarantino was beside himself with excitement. So much so that he took a seat at the table and exclaimed, "I definitely feel some magic in the air tonight." I'm sure that the other players probably thought this guy was excited not to have his dice roll into the couch like the rest of us, but as unsuspecting victim came back into the room, it dawned on me what Tarantino was so excited about. She had worn flip-flops of her own to the game. The rest was like watching the last part of a long, dark, ritual courtship. Unsuspecting victim managed to sit the farthest away from Tarantino that she had in the previous weeks. She squeezed into a corner between me and another player. Tarantino looked visibly disappointed and slumped down into his chair, but the curse was too far advanced to stop now. The game went on, but Tarantino was, distracted. He kept on looking under the table and fidgeting. He dropped more than one dice, and to my horror, I noticed that his phone, usually right next to his face for the entire game, was under the table. He was clearly taking pictures, but no one seemed to notice, and I was too freaked out by this behavior to even know what to do at this point. As the night wore on, unsuspecting victim actually seemed like she was having the most fun with the game she had so far. She was more engaged without the obvious distraction, and the tabletop allowed her to spread out her notes, and I remember being impressed with the amount of detail she actually had been able to take down from the game with all that was going on. All this was thrown out the window about 2 hours in when she jumped in pain and recoiled from the table. I immediately looked down and saw that a stream of blood was trickling down her ankle. The other players all looked under the table when I pointed out she was bleeding, checking for signs of broken glass or something protruding underneath. But Tarantino, victim, and I knew the truth. He had stretched out his giant, hellish legs over to her under the table and cut her with one of his grimy toenails. What the fuck? Anyway, it didn't take long for her to point that out, simply asking, "Did you just cut me with your foot?" And when Tarantino began apologizing profusely, she looked as though she was about to faint. DEM returned with bandages and alcohol swabs, but when the other players realized what had happened, one of them unabashedly suggested that she should get a tetanus shot. This seemed to bring her back to her senses. She came back to a quiet but heated argument between DM and Tarantino, DM saying that Tarantino shouldn't bandage her up, DM can handle it, it's his house, he's the host, and Tarantino demanding that he be allowed to bandage her because creepy reasons. In the end, she bandaged herself after quite a few swabs and promptly grabbed her things and left. Throughout all of this, Tarantino is apologizing again and again, saying, "My bad, I'm just so tall, and I have giant feet," as if these were actual excuses for why he went Edward Clipper nails on her legs, but also an indication of, something else. The game broke up after that, and DM and I played a few more times, but never again with Tarantino or, unfortunately, unsuspecting victim. He wasn't a bad DM by any means, but we eventually just grew apart. I hope wherever this group is now, they're in a better place, and that unsuspecting victim got that tetanus shot. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I think after reading that shit show, I have had quite enough of the internet for one day. There's not even a lesson to take away from this. No analysis to be made, just like, I'm in utter shock, disbelief, even a little bit of wonder, I would say, because I just can hardly comprehend the words that have just entered my brain and exited my mouth into this microphone. I just have nothing. Really, I mean, I have nothing at this point. If you guys enjoyed this video, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of my content, please do hit subscribe. If you want to leave your own thoughts, go down to the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment, the death of Crispy, because that's essentially what this story was. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell. Maybe for the last time. Who the hell knows anymore?